Good morning, everybody. My name's, just for the viewing audience, I'm the Deputy Warden, and I'll be chairing these new meetings. And these new meetings are to replace the Committee of the Whole meetings, and they're called the Policy and Strategy Sessions. And what they're designed to do is for council to bring up some things of policy and strategy that they have more of an in-depth discussion. And then staff to take these ideas away and come back with a report and council approval. So we'll move on. I'll call the meeting to order. And we respectfully acknowledge that we live and work in Mi'kma'ki as a steward of the ancestral territory of the Mi'kma'ki people. We are all treaty people. I'll ask for the approval of the agenda, but before we do that, we're going to take off topic 2 in the extension, the extended producer's responsibility, EPR presentation. That'll be done at the next council meeting. In camera. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll move it. I never get to do that.
Moved by Warden Weber, seconded by Councillor Brender. All four? Against? Motion's carried. Okay, I guess we're going to move along to the presentations. So this is the RCMP presentation. You have the floor.
Yep, you're on.
Okay.
I'll just do a quick introduction. So Haley Crichton and Danielle Desjardins are here from the Department of Justice, and they are going to go through the Nova Scotia PPSA administration. So that's the contract that we have with the province to administer RCMP. So they're going to give us a presentation on that today.
Perfect, thank you. And I guess we can just advise when we're looking to advance the slides. Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you. So we can go to slide 2, please. So thank you very much for the introduction. We're very happy to be here today. My name is, as you said, my name is Haley Crichton. I'm with the Department of Justice. I'm the Executive Director for Public Safety and Security Division, which is one division within the Department of Justice, and we have legislative oversight for policing across Nova Scotia.
Hi, I'm Danielle Desjardins. I am the RCMP liaison to Nova Scotia Department of Justice, so I work a lot with municipalities that are policed by the RCMP in the province.
So today's presentation, we're going to go through a few different kind of buckets of information. The first is just a general overview of the structure of the RCMP as they operate currently in the province of Nova Scotia, and then a more kind of nuanced discussion about your area in particular. And then we'll move into the very exciting component, which is the administration, including the financial administration of the PPSA within Nova Scotia as well.
Great, thank you. So I'm up first. So just to give an overview of the RCMP within the province, so you're probably very familiar with your detachment, Lunenburg District RCMP, which does have an office in Chester. But the division as a whole is considered Nova Scotia's provincial police. They've been so since 1932, and they're known collectively as H Division. I have here just an overview of the work that they do. I won't go into detail. I think everybody pretty much understands the work that that police officers do in the province. Total in the division, we have almost 1,600 resources. Over 1,000 of those are police officers, and then there's a mix of civilian employees, both civilian members and what we call public service employees, federal employees. Next slide. So the operations of the RCMP are governed by the RCMP Act, and Haley will get into the contractual agreement that exists between federal and provincial and even some municipal governments that outline the policing service delivery of the RCMP. In Nova Scotia, there's 34 municipalities and a number of First Nations that receive policing services through the PPSA, and then there's also a number of municipalities that have municipal contracts. There's a total of 53 detachments. including division headquarters as well as a training center, which I'll speak a bit more in some upcoming slides. The division is split up into 3 districts. So in blue is Northeast Nova, red is Halifax District, which is integrated with Halifax Regional Police, and then in the green there, encompassing Lunenburg County, is Southwest Nova. Each one of these districts reports up, oh, no, that's perfect, you can actually move forward. Each one of those districts actually rolls up to, so your detachment commander would roll up to a district policing officer, and for Northeast and Southwest Nova, they report to a criminal operations officer who reports then up to our commanding officer, who's currently Assistant Commissioner Dennis Daly. As you see, there's a number of other reporting lines there. Administration and personnel that covers all the HR units. Halifax District, due to its unique nature, is kind of standalone there as well. Next slide. So support services in RCMP in the division, there's a number of specialized units that provide support to frontline policing and expertise for those more serious or complex crimes. Haley will get into how that kind of folds into the administration and in terms of cost, but essentially all of these resources are here and available to support operations at your local detachment or district as they're needed. So there's quite a comprehensive list here. If ever there's any that are of interest to you that you'd like to know more about, because some of them, you know, would be more familiar, such as police dogs, emergency response team. But we're really fortunate in the province to have a number of really unique units, such as cybercrime, human trafficking unit, division forensic services, which is your kind of tech crime. There's really pretty much anything you can think of that we would need support for, we do have in the division. So I'd be remiss not to mention the administrative support that's provided to the division. The most common of those are your detachment support staff, the folks that work in your local, the public servants that work in your local detachment that provide support for, you know, walk-ins, criminal records checks. They support administrative functions of police. But in addition to that, there's quite a breadth of operational support to provide, I guess, the business side of the policing, and that includes, you know, finance, human resources, communications. Obviously, technology is a big piece with computers and radios, so IMIT is there, training, and then obviously operational communications, so that's your dispatch center as well. So in regards to equipment and infrastructure, this also comes part and parcel with your policing service. So that is everything from the equipment that officers have on their duty belts, you know, their firearms, batons, OC spray, but also specialized tools. I have there just a photo of a drone that's used for, could be used for surveillance, for collision reconstruction if there's a serious car accident. Those are often deployed. As well, your detachments, some force housing, and the records and data management is a big piece too, just given that's where officers do a lot of their work on files, on the police record and occurrence system. So yeah, moving on. Of course, being a partly rural province, we have a lot of ground to cover, and so vehicles are essential to police operations. Throughout the division, there's a number of regular automobiles. So mostly SUVs are moving a bit away from sedans, but there's also off-highway vehicles, motorcycles used by the traffic unit, tactical vehicles. You see there's quite a few there. I'll also point out, because we're a coastal province, there's a number of vessels located strategically within the division. There is one, I believe, stationed in Lunenburg District. As well, Air Services, which is a shared service in Atlantic Canada for the RCMP, with a fixed-wing plane and a helicopter based out of New Brunswick, but can be deployed within the province as required. So the RCMP Training Center, I bring this point up because it's really useful for policing operations in the sense that having a localized training center in the province ensures that members spend less time away from frontline duties and operations when they need to go for training and skills maintenance, which happens usually about 1 week every 2 years. But for more specialized teams, they often have to train and refresh their skills more frequently. There's also reduced costs because they're not, they may be able to travel back home in the same day as opposed to having to spend a week or two away from home or their detachment. So accountability in the RCMP, there's a number of ways that the RCMP is accountable to its stakeholders, its contract partners, and the communities it polices. It has its annual performance plan. So I highlight this because a unit or a detachment may have its own priorities that it sets. However, it also receives priorities from its police advisory board. That's very key, and I'll probably take this moment to highlight that the Department of Justice does offer a police advisory board training. So if that's something that's of interest, we can provide you with a contact who can help arrange that. And I usually go out with the director, Charcy Marchand, to help facilitate that training. The Department of Justice also provides priorities to the RCMP as a division. Those come from the minister, and the division is accountable to the province for those. National RCMP as well, and I point out the RCMP's Management Advisory Board, which is a independent body that provides management and administrative guidance and recommendations to the RCMP. So I'll still stay on this slide for a moment, but on the next slide, I'll kind of highlight how all those priorities play together. Quality assurance, so the RCMP can be subject to internal reviews, is subject to internal reviews. They have a managerial review process, which will audit everything from finances to compliance with policy to operations, internal audits, and then external audits in relation to provincial policing standards, which Haley will speak a little bit more to in her slides. With the RCMP as a police service provider, they assume responsibility for civil liability, labor relations, and disciplinary matters, as well as complaints, which I'll speak a little bit more to on another slide. Or actually, I don't think it's in the slide, so I'll speak to it here. It's Civilian Review and Complaints Commission. They are another independent body nationally that will investigate complaints of the RCMP. If a member of the public wishes to make a complaint, they can certainly do so by reaching out to their local detachment, who managers there would investigate that. If for whatever reason the member of the public is not comfortable doing so directly or is not satisfied with the outcome, the resolution of the complaint, they can always reach out to the CRCC, and they have a website that outlines that process there. And of course, it's fine, Cirrus Incident Response Team, just flagging that. I'm sure everyone's familiar, they've seen it in the news, but obviously the RCMP is subject to investigation by CERT if there's ever an instance of police wrongdoing or a complaint of police wrongdoing or serious injury or death involving a police interaction. Grab a sip of water here. So speaking about priorities, this is how kind of the process of priorities within the RCMP world kind of flows. So for municipal units, your police boards would set priorities based on community consultation, and as councillors, you would know what's going on with your community and get feedback from your constituents. So those priorities would be disseminated to detachments to work on. They may also set their own priorities locally. And the example that I would use there would be a municipality may not set a priority around employee wellness for the RCMP, but the detachment may want to work on that. So that's a really great example there. They may also work on things like file quality or administrative paperwork, those kind of things. There's interplay there between the detachment and the division because they will aggregate unit and detachment priorities to inform division priorities as well. And then obviously as a national organization, there will be priorities there. Usually they tend to be quite broad federal policing might not be one that detachments will work on, but youth, for example, would be. So going over to the left side there, you have the Department of Justice. As I mentioned, they set priorities for the division as the provincial police. But also something that's kind of forthcoming and new is that the province will be looking to aggregate municipal priorities to help inform the provincial priorities that they set for the division as a whole. And then lastly, of course, it's going to be important that throughout each of those processes that there's consultation with stakeholders, because, you know, representing, you know, at the provincial level, at the municipal level, that input is going to be very important in determining priorities for policing. And then that's it for my piece. We'll pause there, maybe if there's any questions on any of those there.
Anybody have any questions? Councilor Connor?
Sorry. There you go.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? All of us in the room and we're waiting. So two things in the order that they came up. One, force housing. Is there much of that around the province? I know that we have a house here in this municipality.
Okay. I want to say I don't know the exact number, but it's a few dozen around the
Okay.
province. They tend to be in more remote areas. And just due to the fact that there can be issues when members are transferring in and availability of houses. Those houses are then leased back to, they're owned by the federal government, but leased to the members and or their families at fair market rate.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
No, I think it's a wonderful program. And we are fortunate in this municipality and in particular my area, which is New Ross.
Okay,
So
yeah.
there
Yes,
is-
that's
there is-
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
there
Yeah.
is a home there that the municipality, I believe, purchased actually way before my time and way
Okay.
before any of my recollection about any of it. right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but
And it
we're-
keeps the members in the community, right?
Absolutely, yeah, we're very much appreciative of that. Second thing, Police Advisory Board training. I think that's wonderful. I know that a few of us sit on the RCMP Advisory Committee, and I believe that probably, we do mention that to any of our citizens that step up to serve, probably, I imagine, and certainly will do so going forward. And I know that the offer's always been there as well to travel into the Dartmouth location and do the tour and so
yeah,
on. But
yeah.
the actual Police Advisory Board training, so did you mention that you kind of,
I support it along with one of our colleagues, but I can provide you can reach out to me or I can provide you with the contacts so we can arrange that whenever.
well, it's always
whenever
just
you'd
good
like.
to have in the
Yeah.
toolkit, right? So in
Absolutely.
terms of- So thank you, those are my two,
Great.
thanks.
I just wanted to ask a question concerning the services available and, like, the RCMP is our police force. So I know that if we need resources from all across the country, they're available to us, and it doesn't change the fee structure or the bill we pay or anything like that. Is that the same for municipal units who have their own police force?
Let you take this one.
Thank you. So if you don't mind, that's actually part of my presentation.
wasn't
And we
sure.
can, it's very important, and we can speak to it in greater detail because it's within the context of the administration of the contract, if that works for you.
That's fine.
I'm just gonna let you know, we're offline right now. They disconnected, so they're working on fixing it, but we can keep the meeting going and we'll just join when we can.
Has a question?
Yeah, a simple one. No, I just, I noticed you have a big fleet, of course, and some municipal police forces have started to adopt policies around electrification of vehicles and stuff like that. I'm just curious what the RCMP's take is on that, you know.
All right. Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. In my old role, I actually supported fleet, and one of the projects that we worked on was how the division was going to implement national policy. So there's actually a can't remember the exact term, but there's a national federal government policy to green and have net zero fleet across the board, I think by 2030. Not sure if we're going to get there quite yet, but the division has purchased a number of electric vehicles that should start rolling out this year. But of course, with that comes the need for charging infrastructure. So that's the sticking point, but you should start to see some, they're going to be administrative vehicles first, because I think there's a lot of considerations for operational vehicles that haven't quite been ironed out yet. They are piloting a number of electric operational vehicles across the country, but I think everybody recognizes the need to get there sooner than later, and we're working towards that.
Well, no doubt some people recognize the need.
Yeah.
Just curious, since you're familiar with fleet operations, would you say the electrification is going to be a cost adder or a decrease in cost?
Well, what we've been told, and from my own personal knowledge of electric vehicles, you may pay more at the onset for the vehicle itself, but over time you'll pay less for maintenance. So it could balance out. And then obviously the cost of fuel, right? So electricity tends to be cheaper to to use an electric vehicle compared to fuel costs. So I think it's expected to be neutral at worst.
Okay.
I'd just like to ask, tagging on to Andrew there, I can understand electric for staff, but, sorry, so it's not working anyway. So I'd be interested to know how the pilot project would work. And I'm just a scenario, I mean, you're on a chase with an electric vehicle. So what happens when you run out of juice?
Yeah.
The guy got a gas car. So I mean, that just makes, to me, I mean, you know, the world's going green, I understand that, but
Yeah.
practicality would just dictate that that wouldn't work in those scenarios at all.
Yeah, it's you know, some electric vehicles do have like range that does, you know, that is pretty close to what a regular gas vehicle would have.
Really?
But I think the pilot is more concerned about, you know, the intricacies of police operations. I know some things that were brought up were if a member leaves their car, you know, if it automatically locks, you know, those kind of things, or even their MWS, so their computer that they have in the vehicle, and how that kind of interplays with the systems within the car. Things like they would often leave their car running to make sure that that computer stays on. So is that going to be an issue with an electric vehicle? So it's really making sure you kind of look at all the aspects of police interaction in
Well, I hope
operations.
they do before they make the
Oh, absolutely.
major decision.
They absolutely will.
Because it'll affect our contract, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? You may proceed.
Well, get excited, because now I'm in the contract administration
okay.
section, so I get to follow the police equipment with contract. So for this section of the contract, we'll just review kind of how Nova Scotia administers the Provincial Police Service Agreement, or the PPSA, which is the agreement that Chester is under for policing services. I'll note that there's a delineation between the PPSA as a whole. So the agreement as a whole is relatively consistent across the country. There are some Nova Scotia isms that we had included in ours upon signing in 2012. But the way that the province has then chosen to administer that contract within itself, so how Nova Scotia and municipalities interact under the agreement, that is very specific to Nova Scotia. That is not repeated across the country. So there's just a distinction there between the agreement itself and then how we as a province chose in 2012 to administer that contract with municipalities.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Okay, so we are still live streaming. The microphones just turn on. You don't have to wait to be let in. So you just need to turn your microphones on yourself, but we're still live streaming. No, yeah, you can turn them on and off yourself. I'm not controlling it, so. Sorry, just
You're done.
technical difficulties here, but apparently it's still live streaming. We're good.
Okay, great. So I will speak to the contract as a whole, and then there are a few sections that I'll speak to but won't go into great detail about, and we'll get to those sections. But generally speaking, the RCMP currently provides services to jurisdictions across the country through these agreements, either provincial police service agreements or territorial police service agreements, otherwise known as contract policing. With the two exceptions being the province of Quebec and the province of Ontario right now, who each have their own distinct provincial police service. So that leaves 11 provinces and territories who currently participate in contract policing. And then there is also 150 municipalities across the country that have what's called a Municipal Police Service Agreement, so an MPSA, which is a contract directly between a municipality and the federal government for RCMP service provision. The province is not a part of those contracts. In Nova Scotia, we only have 5. So this is the one where I'll comment on it, but I won't go into great detail because Chester is policed under the Provincial Police Service Agreement. And the agreement, there are First Nations communities across the country as well that are policed by the RCMP under a different agreement because just to make it add a layer, they're policed under what's called the First Nations and Inuit Policing Program. In Nova Scotia, we have 8 communities that currently participate through that program, 7 of which are policed by the RCMP, and 1 community is policed by Cape Breton Regional Police Service, and that is Member 2 First Nation in Cape Breton. So the agreements themselves, they outline the roles and responsibilities for both contract partners. So the signatories to the agreement are the province of Nova Scotia and Public Safety Canada. The RCMP is not a signatory to the Provincial Police Service Agreement. They are the service provider. So roles and responsibilities are dictated for both contract partners and then the RCMP, who serve as the service provider through the agreement. But of course, as our service provider, the province has a lot of communication, consultation, and conversations with H Division as our service provider. So things like the level of policing service provision, the budget, policing priorities, all of that are really produced in consultation with our service provider. So the agreements are 20-year agreements. The PPSA was signed in 2012 and is set to expire March 31st, 2032. Though that seems very far away, it's actually very close. And so we are already engaging in conversations with respect to the future of contract policing for the province of Nova Scotia. As you might know, there is a general kind of high-level cost share associated with the provincial and territorial police service agreements. The federal government is responsible for 30% of the costs of policing services provided under these agreements. I get a little bit more in the next slide, but again, to differentiate between MPSAs, there are population thresholds that are included within the police service agreement. And so those who are policed under the Municipal Police Service Agreement, they can either have the 70-30, depending on population, or actually move to a 90-10 cost share, where the municipality pays 90% of the cost and the federal government pays 10%. Where we get into one of the Nova Scotia isms, or something specific to Nova Scotia, is our definition of municipality under our agreement. So we have utilized the definition of municipality per our MGA in this province, which then actually excludes districts and counties from those population thresholds. So that's why we have some districts and counties that are much larger than the population threshold in the agreement, which is only 15,000. So it's actually quite a low population threshold, but our districts are excluded from that definition, so we are not subject to those population thresholds in Nova Scotia specifically. So that is very unique to Nova Scotia. And we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So quickly, these are the Municipal Police Service Agreements. So again, I'll touch on it, but I won't go into so much detail. We have 5 across the province, as I said. These are direct contracts. We have some that have maintained the 70-30, but we also have some that have moved to the 90-10 based on a population threshold. And so while the province is not a part of those agreements for the MPSAs, what is important to note is that there are some shared costs with our PPSA as well. So anybody using the RCMP services, regardless of the type of contract that they're under, are also using the Operational Communication Center, for example, so the dispatching services. And they're also utilizing this very long acronym of District Advisory Non-Commissioned Officers, which is just the very senior officers of the RCMP that serve the totality of the division, regardless of what kind of contract you're under. And so instead of trying to piecemeal that, we just spread the cost of those two things across everyone that is policed by the RCMP. So there is a benefit there because we spread the cost amongst all municipalities that are using RCMP services. And I'll pause here just to say I'm going to throw a lot of information at you, but want to ensure you understand that both Danielle and I, and Charcy Marchand, who's not here, but she's the one that does the Police Advisory Board training, we're always available. So if you look through this information later this afternoon, tomorrow, next week, and you have a question, please always feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to have a secondary discussion, either collectively or individually. We're always happy to have those conversations. Generally speaking, for the financial component of this agreement, though, the RCMP provides to the province of Nova Scotia in and around June 1st of every year what's called the multi-year financial plan. So really that is the budget ask or the budget proposal. That would be its kind of comparator when we're looking at areas policed by municipal police, for example. And the Department of Justice receives that and reviews that for quite a number of months, going back and forth with the division to seek clarity, to seek more information. And then the Department of Justice staff will make a recommendation to the Minister of Justice for the next fiscal year. The minister then will either approve or make changes, and after the minister approves, it moves to the Treasury Board, for the province, and then moves through the larger Government of Nova Scotia Treasury Board process. The reason why I go through this is to note and acknowledge that our budget process and timeline does not level out with the municipal budget process and timeline. And we know that, and we do acknowledge that. Where we can, we have, in most recent years, since we've joined the Department of Justice, tried to give municipalities a bit of a flag for the following fiscal year, always pending Treasury Board approvals, but just an indication as you're going through your budget forecasting process. Of course, this year was a little bit different. We had quite a number of things occur during our budget process, and not the least of which was a provincial election, which kind of changed the trajectory of our work. But generally speaking, that is how we will be moving forward to ensure municipalities have the information that they need at the time that they need it, noting that bit of a caveat there. In addition, we're also very attuned to the labor negotiations process for the RCMP as well. So when we're giving that information to municipalities, know that we're already building in our expectation for that collective bargaining process. So we can speak to that as we move forward with how that kind of has played out in more recent years. And I'm done, so thank you so much.
I'd like to ask a question, and I don't know if you can answer it, but in these contracts, based on the contract, you provide X amount of officers. So we pay based on that. So we get reports from at RCM Advisory or from the RCMP that, that we didn't have the deployment that we should have gotten here because of officers being offered for whatever reason. And I asked that question at an SFM meeting to a counselor that had been around as long as Alan has, and he couldn't answer it. Like, that's what happens. We just pay, and it's not prorated in any way. So how does, I just want an answer like, that's the way it is. We have no control you know, if someone's out sick. We've never ever gotten any answers on that. I don't know if you can answer it.
I sure can.
Okay,
And I'd be happy to.
okay.
So, do you mind jumping ahead 2 slides? I apologize. Okay, so I'll just speak to it now, though. So I'll answer your question kind of in 2 parts. The first is that we recognize that members can be on leave at any given time for any number of reasons. Either they're off-duty sick, they've been injured, they're on maternity leave, family leave, parental leave, whatever the case may be. There are systems that are utilized to ensure that a municipality is never going without. So we will bring in members on overtime to ensure that the members required to have effective and adequate policing is always maintained within municipalities. Public safety is never compromised in that respect. With respect to billing, there are 2 kinds of vacant positions. The first is hard vacant, so that is a position that's been established but nobody owns it yet. So there's no individual that's kind of tied to that position. Usually that happens when we've created approved a new position and we just haven't staffed anybody into it yet. Those positions we do prorate. So if we've established a new position for Chester, for example, but the position was filled 6 months into the fiscal year, we don't bill for the full year, we'll prorate it for that 6 months period of time. The second kind of leave is soft vacancies, and that would be more what you're referring to here, which is a member has gone on leave, but they technically still own the box that has been established for that member. So what differentiates the RCMP from municipal police, for example, is that the RCMP does not have a system of workers' compensation to backfill that position on a one-to-one basis and the costs associated with workers' compensation. We, because that in the RCMP, that person still owns that box, so we can't refill it permanently. So that's where you get that system of overtime to compensate for that member who's off. The province does not directly bill municipalities for overtime. What we do is an aggregate across the province of overtime usage and forecast that aggregate level for the following fiscal year, if this is all clear as mud. But there is a benefit to doing that because it, number one, spreads the cost across all municipalities utilizing the RCMP, but second, tamps down the roller coaster of prices or costs that is associated with overtime provision, because you might have a member off for a month and then you could see costs spike and then have no members off and see it, deplete very quickly. But we're trying to keep it relatively consistent, and I'll show you in this presentation exactly where that overtime cost and how it is reflected in your billing. But it's an imperfect process. I don't want to sit here and pretend that this is, best case scenario, but we are working with what we have to ensure that, number one, public safety is never at risk, and number two, that we're not seeing massive spikes and declines.
Yeah, well, that was what my analogy would be if I'm a contractor and I promise Andre that I'm gonna paint his house with Pratt and Lambert paint or Benjamin Moore paint and paint it with Beauty Tone. It's still paint, but it's just not as good as paint. So that's the analogy that I would use. Thank you anyway. Thanks.
Turn your mic on. Oh, there you go. Do you mandate overtime? Because you said that these vacant positions may be filled by overtime. Do you mandate overtime? Because if not, members would not have to work if they didn't wish to do overtime.
So this, I will defer to Danielle, but we also might report back with your district level resources. I want to be careful. So the role of the province is administration, and oftentimes we dance this line between the administration and the operation. So the province does not mandate a certain number of hours for officers, because the administration, like the operation of the RCMP, is the responsibility of the assistant commissioner, kind of on the policing side.
Yeah, and to that point, most attachments will have a minimum like shift coverage level, so a certain expectation of a number of officers on shift. If ever they dip below that, they will first look at overtime locally, but will also use resources from within the division. So I've never really seen a case where there was not the inability to fill shifts with overtime. Sometimes it was more of a challenge, but you also have a number of resources at headquarters. I know that they developed a deployment strategy to actually use officers that are in more administrative roles at headquarters to work frontline overtime shifts as required to ensure, adequacy and effectiveness of policing services.
Councillor Connor?
Thank you. So I fully grasp the discussion around if there is an individual that owns that position, if you will, and is out on for medical reasons. Because we've experienced that here, and certainly sitting on the RCMP Advisory Committee since for the last decade plus, I get that, because we've had those discussions in terms of some of those positions within our municipality, or Lunenburg County in our municipality. What I don't grasp just yet is, and the idea of the prorating of overtime or salaries, and then equating that or sharing that out throughout the province of the municipalities that use the services of the RCMP. How, and I understand and I get how we would bill other municipal units if we are looking at a regional coordinator and we're doing the billing, or even paying maybe another municipal unit. I understand that formula, but I don't understand how you bill across all of the municipalities. Like, is it based on population, assessments, like what's it based on?
So I am about to get to that. A breakdown of what it is that you're paying for, and then how we come to that dollar amount.
Okay, thank you.
So at the highest of levels, how we as the province are billed is that the RCMP sends us an invoice quarterly, and then we pay the RCMP directly, and then we recover from municipalities a portion of those costs. And we can move to the next slide to start getting into the nitty-gritty of that. So the first section there with respect to population thresholds, again, it is there for your information, but I will move to the second kind of paragraph there. So in Nova Scotia, as I said, the federal government is responsible for 30% of the costs of policing, and there's a number of reasons why the government pays that 30%, but I'll kind of park that for now and speak specifically to the 70% portion that Nova Scotia is responsible for. So of that 70%, we do not recover from municipalities the totality of that cost. Currently, we bill per officer, so at a per officer rate, and I'll tell you how we get to that per officer rate. And I'll distinguish there between front of house services. So those are your frontline police officers that are serving in detachments across the province. I think that there's 43, we just talked about this the other day, 43 in this district that are responsible for this area. They're, more of your general duty type policing with a few exceptions that you see on a day-to-day. Those I would call front of house services because you see them. There is also a contingent of RCMP officers that serve back of house functions, which would account for that long list that Danielle had at the beginning of her presentation, which are officers you don't really see on a day-to-day, but they are within the division to provide those supporting services as and when required, some more often than others. The province only recovers from municipalities the amount associated with those front of house services. So the province absorbs the cost per officer. The province, we pay the same per officer rate as you do, but we pay for all of those officers that are in those back of house service delivery areas. And Danielle, unfortunately, has been with me on so many of these presentations that she's heard me repeat this many times. I am a visual learner, so we will now go through 3 slides where the same information is provided in 3 different visual ways. That's good. So again, as I said, the federal government pays 30% of the cost, and that's that green section that we kind of put across to the side there. And in the province, we The number of officers serving those back-of-house functions equates to about 1/3 of the number of police officers we have in the province. The province pays the per officer cost for that 1/3 of those officers. And then we recover from municipalities the per officer rate of those front-of-house services, and that ends up equating to approximately 2/3 of the 70%. We can go to the next slide, which is the same thing. So same but different. So this is more just to indicate that it's all about person counts, about head counts. Because we utilize this per officer cost, which I'll get into how we come to that calculation. But we use that per officer cost metric across the board. It doesn't matter if it's a general duty police officer or somebody on the emergency response team. And our per officer cost is actually rank agnostic as well. So from a constable up to a sergeant, they're all billed at the same rate. So there is a distinction between what we bill, and this speaks a little bit to your specialized services question, which is how you're accounted for, and then I can speak a little bit to the municipal police as well. But with the RCMP service provision, we don't bill for that, nor do we bill for the use of it. Like if the emergency response team was called to Chester for any number of reasons, there wouldn't be a secondary invoice that would come to the municipality to pay for that service delivery. It's just a part of the overarching PPSA package. Municipal policing, it's a little bit different. So in September 2024, the Minister of Justice implemented the provincial policing standards that are applicable to all police agencies across the province of Nova Scotia, RCMP included, and all our municipal police service providers as well. With respect to specialized services, in those standards, it doesn't say that every single municipal police agency needs to have a specialized service unit. So not every agency needs to have an emergency response team, for example, and I give that example because for me it's the easiest one to kind of contain and understand. So we're not saying that every police service in the province needs to have it, but what we are asking now is that every single police agency in this province needs to show the province that they have formalized access to that service through an agreement with an alternative service provider. So in the past, these functions have been very informal. There's just kind of an overarching understanding. Handshake agreement. We call them golf course agreement. But the kind of general understanding that if I need something in an area that doesn't have a specialized service, that I can call someone and it'll come. But for the province, what that results in and why we instituted the standards is inequitable service delivery across the province. Because some areas might have something and don't have an agreement, and so you can't rely on something where there's not roles and expectations set out for both the receiver and the provider. So that's what this process has set out to do, is to set clear expectations across the province from Yarmouth to Glace Bay, that all agencies need to show the province that they have formalized access to the specialized services that are to be provided. And that is a difference that has come into force in September. With those standards have come a provincial police auditing unit that's within my division as well. We have given agencies 1 year of implementation, and we're working with those agencies. So the police auditing unit actually already goes out, provides advisory services to all police agencies, and I can confirm that the audit unit has gone out to every single police service in this province and met with the chief and the municipality responsible, depending on the type of police service. And in fall of 2025 is when the auditing process will begin. And that audit is to ensure compliance with the provincial policing standards, because a standard is only so useful as you ensure that it is being complied to. So that's a new process, but that kind of explains where we are right now provincially with the specialized services. At the moment, it depends. So, for example, if we know that there are municipal agencies that share resources and they do send invoices back and forth, historically, there has been a reliance on the RCMP to provide those services. As of yet, they have not received an invoice for those services, but that is a part of this standard development process. And in addition to that, it is being contemplated under the current policing review for the province of Nova Scotia and how those services are provided and the cost associated with those services. So that is being contemplated at this time.
So if you don't use the RCMP, you will get billed.
I want to be careful that I'm not over committing because the police review is ongoing, but it is certainly something that
It's
is
the intent.
being contemplated. And right now, that exists between municipal agencies themselves. So municipal agencies are sharing
We
those costs.
share services, that's how we do, that's up to us.
Absolutely.
But what I wanna know
Sorry, I meant
is if-
policing services. There
Yeah.
are municipal police agencies that are sharing specialized services with other municipal police agencies.
Absolutely,
And are
and that's a
invoicing for
contract
those.
between themselves. But I guess what I wanna know, like, we can call on the RCMP for any amount of people we could possibly need. And there's no extra bill. But if you have a city police force or a town police force, in the past, you haven't paid if you needed them for those specialized services. But you're telling me now that we're moving in a direction where there may be a bill sent.
It is a possibility. I think that that's the kind of level of commitment that I want to share here, because I don't want to overspeak for the outcome of the police review.
No, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I mean, one of the rationales for maintaining RCMP service as opposed to having your own town police force was that you had this broad resource if you required it.
Yes.
I mean, I know that in the state of emergency, the RCMP are gonna do whatever they
Yes,
have to do anyway,
absolutely.
you know, just like fire departments, but I mean, that was one of the rationales that we have that, and if you had your own police force, you didn't have that. But if you have it because you're not paying for it even if you do need it, and you only got 3 officers and you should have 10, then there may be logic in going down that road.
So again, I want to be very careful. We have committed to sharing the outcome of the police review in spring 2025. So we're very close. We're maintaining kind of that timeline. So the reason why I'm being cautious here is because I don't want
Yes.
to make the impression that we've come to a conclusion on that when we have not yet.
One thing I'll just add to that as well is by formalizing these agreements with municipal police forces who may not have those particular resources, does allow for the RCMP as well to ensure that they're adequately resourced. Because if they're going to be providing ERT services, if it's one thing if it's for its existing jurisdictions, but to ensure that, the service is available, that it's adequate and effective, they need to know who they're expected to provide service to and at what capacity and have redundancy, all those kind of things. So the formalized agreements, not just it's not meant to just deal with the financial aspect, but really to ensure proper service delivery.
Yeah, but if you have to increase the service or the resources that you have in order to provide that service to people who aren't paying for it, then those of us who are paying for it are paying too much.
Exactly.
Well, that's
Yes.
what I want to get straight.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is a big contributor to this process. One thing I'll also note, though, thank you. Due to the RCMP Act, now we're getting,
I know.
the RCMP cannot invoice a third party directly. So we will never come to a place where if the RCMP provides a service to, Town of Bridgewater, that the RCMP can just independently send an invoice to the Town of Bridgewater for services that have been provided. Because they would essentially be sending an invoice on behalf of the person that holds the contract, which is actually the province.
Yeah.
So any kind of financial agreement has to come through the province, and that's why we want to be clear that we don't overspeak for the outcome of the police review, because that's what it's looking at, is the role of the province in policing. So I just want to be very clear.
I'm just glad you're looking at it.
Yes,
Because it's-
absolutely.
Because it's one of the things that comes up every time we decide whether we're gonna re-sign a contract or we're not gonna re-sign a contract.
Yes, and we
And I
acknowledge that.
recognize that you're a national police force, which goes well beyond everything else, that somebody tries to invade Canada, we're all going there, you know, something like that, but.
Yeah, so, it is an extremely nuanced discussion, obviously, because there are a number of factors at play. At the outset, though, the purpose of the standards and why we put those forward prior to the outcome of the policing review, it was strategically ordered, because the standards don't cover all aspects of policing services right now. What they cover are the highest risk areas of policing for which we need to outline roles and responsibilities of service providers and service receivers now to make sure that everybody has access to the correct resources. The billing, the costing, the relationship between the province and municipalities with that respect, that is a part of the larger policing review, like I said, that we're still on track for as a province. But the standards were instituted because informality is not a good insurance plan when we're talking about policing. So that's the order that we went with.
I'll wait till you have the report.
Thank you.
I'm done. You're turning me off.
So this would obviously have a big effect if you come out with the report and say that, you know, they're gonna not be included, or, as Alan spoke to. That would make a big impact on our decision whether to, the contract is up in 2027 or 37, you said? Our police
The
contract.
overarching provincial police contract is up in 2032, but we're
20.
already in discussions
Yeah.
for the future of contract policing now.
Yeah.
With respect to the police review, there was a lot of information gathered as a part of that process, but I would say, you know, policing is very much a layered experience. Those receiving policing services are not those of us, you know, necessarily sitting in our government administration buildings in Halifax. It's the communities that are receiving policing. So how this rolls forward would always include the perceptions and comments consultation with municipalities. This is not something we can simply do alone.
Also add the audit functions will be providing their reports.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
The police auditing unit as well, with respect to accountabilities for that process, reports completed by that audit unit will be going to the local detachments, but also the police advisory boards as well. So those participating on those, and municipal boards of police commissioners as well for the municipal policing side. So those will be shared with the bodies to which those agencies or detachments are accountable to.
Thank you.
We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So now moving into that per officer cost that I had been discussing previously. So the simple version of it is that we take the totality of the cost of the RCMP and we divide that cost by the number of regular members or sworn police officers that are that exist in the province of Nova Scotia. That's how we come to that cost. So essentially what that is an off-the-shelf service cost, is what I like to call it, because it's not just the salary dollars, but it's everything that makes a police officer, including cars, radios, detachment, the lights on in the detachment, the fuel for the cars. All of that is included in that per officer cost because it's a quote-unquote off-the-shelf service. And where that gets differentiated when we're comparing between RCMP budget reporting and, say, municipal police budget reporting, is that the per officer cost is all encompassing and kind of sits atop in your municipal kind of budget accounting. In municipal policing, sometimes it looks a little bit different because the agency is an asset of the municipality, and so there are some areas of their budget that might be included in the overarching municipal budget but not hived off for policing in particular. Easiest example is fleet. So oftentimes for municipalities with a municipal police service delivery agent, that policing service fleet might just be included in the overarching municipal fleet budget. It's not necessarily a part of the police-specific budget. And I only say that to account for the apples to oranges comparison when we're looking at just kind of the numbers themselves. There's a little bit of a nuance there in the difference in service delivery. So I'll go through it here, but I'll note as well the factors of that per officer cost, everything that's included in it. That we also have a handout where each one of the bullets that I'll touch on today, we actually have a full description of exactly what that means in much greater detail. But I would be here for very many hours if we went through it that way here this morning. So we can, oh, sorry, I'll just note, there's a vacancy of factor we also apply to that per officer billing, but I'll get into greater detail, and we can go to the next slide. So to your point, historically, we do not recover overages from municipalities. So if at the end of the year, the RCMP was in a deficit situation, we do not come back to municipalities after Q4 and bill an amount on top of what we'd already invoiced for the RCMP. The province absorbs that cost. In addition, we don't cost recover for exigent circumstances where we bring resources in from outside of the province of Nova Scotia. So part of our contract for policing services is that as and when required, we are able to invoke a certain chapter of the agreement. It's called Article 9. And that allows us to draw in resources from, we can realign resources within the province, but more visibly different is that we can actually bring resources in from outside the province of Nova Scotia as well. That is human resources, but it also includes physical resources as well, such as air support, all of that we can bring in from outside the province as well. And we have. Perhaps the most visible example is in 2020 and 2021, the fisheries dispute in southwest Nova Scotia. We did bring resources in from outside the province of Nova Scotia. It's time limited. So there's kind of times where we check back into that are dictated within the contract itself. And then once, excuse me, that exigent circumstance was either dealt with or comes to a kind of neutral position, those officers then go back to their home divisions to provide those services. Okay.
I wonder if, just because some people might want a little break, I'm not sure. I
Sure.
would ask, just how long more do you expect the presentation?
Probably 7 minutes.
Oh, okay, yeah, absolutely. Just
be
checking.
specific. 10 minutes seem too long, but 5
No,
too
that's
short,
okay,
so I'll
you
settle
go
somewhere
right
in
in,
the
that's
middle.
fine.
Okay.
You've been here before.
Once or twice. So again, I'll go through these quickly, just because we have a handout that provides you with much more detail, and so we just want to give an indication, and then we'll kind of go into more detail. Thank you so much. What about my scratchy voice indicated there? So the first is salary and pension, so this is kind of the most obvious one. When you receive your per officer rate per year, sometimes there's a misunderstanding that it's that per officer rate that's actually the salary dollars, and so we have people asking like, are our CMP office constables really getting paid, you know, X numbers of dollars? Not the case. Those salary dollars and benefits are one part of the per officer cost. Now, they are the most significant part, which is not surprising because salary is often the greatest expenditure in an administrative budget. The next is that overtime. So here, Councillor Connors, to go farther into your question about how that gets included, this is where it actually gets included, is within that per officer cost, that we take the aggregate and forecast it for the next fiscal year. Also included is accommodation. So of course with policing there's infrastructure that's also required. That includes new buildings, but also our existing detachments that require renovations, force housing, renovations, things like that, operating costs. The next, interestingly, is actually public service pay. So all the civilian members in the RCMP, the public service employees and the civilian members, we actually take that's part of the per officer cost. So they're divided amongst all municipalities that use RCMP services. So it's a spread over cost. The records management system is part of the per officer cost. So the cost for operating pros, criminal operations, which is firearms, ammunition, vehicles, informatics, can go through. Next slide, sorry. more. These are all included in the per officer cost. So again, we'll send you the breakdown so that there's more information, but essentially there's a lot to administer a policing service, especially one of this magnitude with this number of specialized services being included in that. And so this reflects all of that in one per officer cost. And as a reminder that the province, we pay the same per officer cost for those back of house resources that you pay for your front of house resources. More. And that's it. So all of, like I said, there's far more detail in that handout we provided, but that's how we come to that per officer cost. And then what we're billing is the per officer cost multiplied by the number of frontline resources that you have in your detachment area. So in the county, it's times 43, and then that's divided, of course, between the entities that are within the district itself, based on a variety of factors.
Councillor Vino, you have a question?
I think generally, folks are satisfied with the quality of the service of the RCMP. Probably the same way that many municipal police forces that are separate from the RCMP, I think generally they're satisfied with the level of service, and we have the ability to tune, you know, how many officers or what, you know, what we want in terms of a service. We can address that with Department of Justice, I suppose, and ask for more or less, you know, depending on our community's evolving needs. That's no problem. And for that reason, we don't talk about policing a lot here at this table, if I'm honest. But every once in a while, we sort of like have this reflective moment where we wonder if we're getting the best value for our taxpayer, because there are differing models, as you know. And these local sort of like municipal police forces are sometimes, there's that siren song of possibly like a better value. And as Warden Weber mentioned, you know, one of the concerns you might have within that internal dialogue would be, you know, are we losing resources? You know, if we were to move to, you know, a municipal police force, you know, are we gonna, we won't have that blood splatter expert or whatever, you know, whatever that specialized position is. But it sounds like those positions, through some sort of agreement, which maybe is gonna be rolled out in a few months, would be there anyway. And whether it's an additional cost or not, we're gonna find out. But really it does come down to dollars, and it sounds like, I know also, I'm a recent addition, I think, to the RCMP advisory board, but I know that we've had discussions about, like, you know, sometimes we feel like we're paying for positions that that we don't actually get because they're vacant. And I guess I'm hearing that, you know, we won't go without, but we may not be getting as many as what we're paying for in some cases. I think recently we've been fairly well staffed, but I know in my tenure as a counselor, that hasn't always been the case. And it sounds like maybe, like it's hard, it's complex, as you say, because you can't just, if you look at a municipal police force, I think they're almost always fully staffed because of a different, like, arrangement that they have for how they manage their officers. But then on the other hand, we're being subsidized in some way by both the province and the federal government. So it somehow offsets probably in, like, some of those inefficiencies. And so it's very difficult to make an apples to apples comparison in terms of cost. So it's very murky for us to try to evaluate the pros and cons of whether we would like to have a municipal police force or not. And because, generally speaking, folks in our communities are okay with the service that we're getting, it's not something that comes up a lot. It tends to sort of just move along, and we just tend to sign these agreements over and over. And I would like to look at it, probably, you know, if I'm honest, at some point, but, you know, I don't know how even we make the comparison, to be honest with you, and, you know, I guess that's just a monologue. I'm not, there's no question.
Yeah.
I could inflect my voice at the end and make it sound like a question, but, I guess that's just my thoughts on the matter up till now.
Yeah, and if I could speak to that very quickly, I know it wasn't a question, but I'm still gonna speak
Well,
to it.
please.
So, listen, I want to be very clear too. You know, my role within the province of Nova Scotia, I'm here today to speak on the RCMP agreement because that's the agreement that you're police under and we're the contract holder for it. But we also want to engage with you about policing in general. So we're not just a contact for RCMP service provision because we're your contract holder. We want to be engaged in discussions with municipalities because ultimately, per our current Police Act, municipalities are able to choose how they discharge policing for their municipality. They can choose how your citizens are receiving policing services. Historically, certainly, the province has viewed the PPSA, you know, for those who've been around the table, we come to the table humbly to say historically the PPSA has been viewed as one large contract and that was it. The province, we dealt with Canada and that was it. What we're trying to do is to engage municipalities independently and distinctly so that we're actually starting to form the relationships between the province and municipalities because the decision and the nuances and the complexities are not simple, clear cut, and frankly, there's never going to be a black and white, very clear answer. There's always going to be offshoots to it. So all that, now I'm monologuing, but all that to say that we are happy to be a part of that discussion as much as the municipality wishes for us to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
Either providing information, providing more presentations, whatever
So
is
that's good
required.
to hear. So like, I mean, as the province, you care that, you know, we're policing our laws and that we're administering justice. You're the Department of Justice. That's what you should want. You know, so if we were to, maybe in a year or two, whenever, start looking at a comparison or something, then would the province be our, you know, assist us in trying to put together some sort of model and try to compare how that would look? Like, because to us, it's so, they're so layered that it would be very difficult to, for us, like a smaller municipality like us to undertake such a study. And I'm sure that we're not the only ones that feel this way, but, you know, it just seems like such a monumental task for something that generally folks are okay with. Like, maybe we're not thrilled, but we don't even know if we have a problem. Like, we don't know if we're overpaying or underpaying. We really don't, we just don't know. It's just one of those things that I think folks are just sort of like, it's not really a problem, so we don't talk about it much.
And we can certainly help with those discussions, absolutely, as needed from the municipality and provide you with some information. We can't, you know, lead the whole thing on behalf of a municipality, especially, you know, if there's conversations with municipal entities for, say, municipal police service provision, we can't give you numbers on that because it's not our, kind of not our bailiwick, but in any way we can, we'll help support, to support providing that information. I'll also say that part of the work that Danielle is doing and Charcy is doing as well is really to liven up, strengthen police advisory boards that are for areas policed by the RCMP as well. Because there's still a lot of work to be done there to ensure that those meetings you are getting the best information that you can out of your local service provider too. So there's actually quite a lot of work that we're all doing together at the same time to kind of improve how we're sharing information about policing generally.
Yeah, I guess my interest is because, you know, it's budget time now, and policing is a big chunk,
absolutely.
and we tended to, in years past, to sort of just see it there, a big number, and we just sort of a bit of a shoulder shrug, and then we sort of move on. But, you know, we don't know, like, if the potential is like, hey, you know, we could shave a lot of money off this and have a pretty similar service. We have never, in my tenure, ever touched that. We've just sort of just accepted it for what it was and just, you know, sighed a little bit. You know, and I would love for that to change over the coming years, and maybe have a chance, maybe not this year, it's too late, but maybe next year or the year after, actually start to explore what, and maybe the answer is, you know, we got the best value right now, and that's fine. It would be nice to be able to defend that decision. Right now, we just sort of like, I guess we have to be at peace with it.
Yeah, one of the other advantages is that when people call and complain about the RCMP, they don't work for me. So if it was the town police, I'd have to do something about it. Anyway, but I look forward to your report, and I think you should charge those people who do not pay for RCMP for the service that they provide.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Connor?
Thank you. So thank you for being here. Actually, I'm going to be taking away a lot of information. I didn't realize coming in, so this is great. Sorry about that. So I think when it comes to part of the slides, when you mentioned about the priorities for us as well, but for our constituents and our community members, that's a takeaway for me. And I think that the only comments or feedback that I might receive from my community members would be is, we need to see more of them, and I get that, we all get that. And also when it relates to some of the off-highway presence. And I know that we mentioned that some of us around that do have trails in our communities that are being used for recreation, but for purposes that may not be, upfront, right? And I get all that, and I have to say, on a positive note, that Staff Sergeant Whalen, who has retired, sadly, was always available for me to call directly, and when I had a concern that was really time-sensitive in my community, it's all I can do, is my community, and he would explain to me very well at the RCMP advisory and as well individually with the staff complement, where we were. He would remind me where we were with gaps at the moment, again, medical reasons, parental leave, whatever, all of that. I get all that. And I think that it's just a constant education for me to have these conversations with my community. But we're all doing, I think, what we can do, but this was really, really good. Certainly one thing that we have made inroads in, if you will, if that's proper grammar, in New Ross is reaching out to the conservation officers with natural resources, and I'm looking at a picture because it was taken just yesterday. We had natural resources in who, for education and awareness, to hopefully get in front of some things, and that's more than half the job, right? Getting in front of something, but I get it, the challenges, but I think we need more of. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing all the time. We need more of. We need more of.
I was just going to speak really quickly to DNR. So I will say at the Department of Justice, we work very closely with DNR as well. And so I'll take this opportunity to also thank DNR because the RCMP and other agencies, we actually have an agreement with DNR for use of their air service fleet as well. So we're really, really, it's about enforcement, more of a larger umbrella, and we're really fortunate in this province that we have a lot of different departments that are working collaboratively together. The RCMP works very, very closely with those conservation officers as well.
So this is a good segue just because there was one additional piece of information I did want to share with you all today, and your reference to visibility and then officers off sick does tie into resourcing. So the RCMP in the division is moving towards a proactive resourcing review for its districts and detachments. Previously, it was often reactive to a municipality looking to review its policing service and its complement for a variety of reasons. So with that, these resource reviews can be quite lengthy and time-consuming, so there's capacity to only do a handful every year. And looking at a number of factors, it does look as though Lunenburg District RCMP is on board to have a resourcing review done later this year. So at that time, myself and some RCMP colleagues, and I don't know who will be in the detachment commander position at the time, but right now it's acting is Sergeant Pat Frenette. I don't know if you've met him yet. He's quite lovely. We'll come out and we'll be meeting with all the municipalities ahead of the review get input into things. You know, one thing that's often looked at is the schedule, for example, because oftentimes a symptom of being under-resourced is low visibility and high off-duty sick. So, so that's why we'll be coming into Lunenburg District later this year, and so so you'll see more of us then.
Thank you. I guess that's it. Thank you very much, Haley and Danielle, for your presentation, and it's very informative. Thank you.
Thank
We're going
you.
to take a break.
I'll move we adjourn.
Oh, we're-
This meeting's over.
this meeting's over, okay. Moved by Alan Weber. Second by Councillor Cooling. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much.